Get the best bottles online for any occasion at getwineonline.com. Get 20% off when you click the banner at the bottom of the FBIA podcast website. Everything from big case orders to single bottles of Merlot or Chardonnay. That's FBIApodcast.com and click the banner at the bottom of the page.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
I'm Kyle, and today we are joined by Jess Root, who is the senior managing editor of RevengeOfTheBirds.com, which is the one and the only Cardinals team and blog page, part of the SB Nation community. Jess is here with us today to discuss the Cardinals, and we are very, very lucky and appreciative to have him. Jess, thanks you so much for coming.
Hey, certainly, and I'm glad to give you an invite. Really appreciate it.
Now let's talk about you for a little bit. For a lot of the people on your page, this is going to be their first chance to kind of get to know you a little bit. So first thing people are going to want to know is, how long have you been a fan of the team?
I've been a fan. I grew up in Arizona. I'm born and raised here in the Phoenix area, so I grew up. I remember when the Cardinals came to town, but I really, that was 87, 88. And I was about 11 years old. I started following the team about 1990. Pretty much after I remember when Neil Lomax got hurt and they went to guys like Gary Hogaboom and Tom Tupa, but I really remember the 1990-1991 season, kind of the first 2 years. I sort of followed the team, started listening to their games on the radio, and, followed the misery that was being a Cardinals fan for years and years and years, from Joe Bugle to Buddy Ryan and the disaster that he became to the 1998 run that the Cardinals had, where they made the playoffs on their last-minute comebacks. The team almost every week of the second half of the season, beating the Cowboys, which was a big deal back in the day, because there were probably as many Cowboy fans, if not more, there were Cardinals fans at the time. And when they played at Sun Devil Stadium, which is our college stadium, it's still there, that would fill up with Cowboys. It would be like a home game for Dallas. I followed the team since that time. I enjoyed a lot of bad seasons and a few good ones, and started covering the team for SB Nation in 2011, and took over running the site Revenge of the Birds in 2012, and I've been doing that ever since. Privileged to have media access, to get credentials to attend home games, to get the off-season access and into a team that I grew up loving.
Now, let me ask you, what is it exactly that made you go from just amateur fan to a professional, spending his time writing, editing, managing a web page? What was the transition there?
Well, I took this kind of a circuitous route to what I do now. My main job, I'm an educator, but I started way back when I started college. I was a broadcast major, and through a series of decisions, and I changed from that to secondary ed. Been teaching for a long time. Then kind of seeing some of the career paths of guys like Bill Simmons, I said, maybe I could, try the whole internet thing out. Started a little blogger page, got picked up by a little local fan site, helped giving them content, submitted my articles to anywhere that would publish them, eventually landing with SB Nation as a staff writer, doing covering it once in a while, then started covering the Cardinals, then I took over the team side. Then I was the regional editor for SB Nation Arizona, which we had a full staff for a little while running the Arizona, covering all of Arizona sports. And then that position eventually went away to focus on just the team sites. But I've been doing the team site now it'll be my fourth season covering the team.
And as you said, kind of growing up with the team and seeing them come in, there's definitely been a lot that you have experienced as a fan. But is there any one memory that you can share with us that you would say is the strongest memory of the team? I'm talking good or bad, anywhere in between. It can be anything. It can be something that's totally just personal for you, or a shared experience like winning a game, or what have you. Anything that you can share with us.
I guess it comes down to the kind of the crowning moment was Larry Fitzgerald touchdown catch in the Super Bowl and being just a couple of minutes away of even that postseason run that they had in 2008, 2009. It was unreal. When they made it to the Super Bowl against the Steelers, and no one really thought that they would. Me and my girlfriend, we didn't even think it would happen. But then suddenly there's 2 minutes left. Fitzgerald on that big play scores that touchdown. It hit. We could do it. And then, of course, our heart was broken, as it was at the end of the first half when Harrison ran back that interception for a touchdown. Ben Roethlisberger shook away sack after sack and, completed passes down the field, and the catch that allegedly Santonio Holmes made. I'm still not terribly I'm not sure I'm convinced that was actually a catch.
Yes, we love the stripe. Yes.
Yes, we do love that. Go ahead, take your hits now. Go ahead, extend them. Shoot the cannons. Do it.
I don't know. I couldn't believe it. It went from in the matter of minutes from the crowning moment as a fan of just complete top of the world where you couldn't even believe it to crushed. And it was the weirdest thing it was actually unreal because of I'd been through year after year after year of a team that had all sorts of expectations, or we're going to be competitive this year, 4 games and they're 1-4, 1-3, and just you root for the team that you never ever have any hope. And then we had a 2-year run where they were legitimately good. It was something else. And then promptly we went back to crap, and then built it back up for a couple of years. The Cardinals fan, you don't know about sustained success, and so you're always there's a part of me that's always, this isn't going to last long, so don't just enjoy it now because it's going to go away. It feels like.
So that kind of built-in skepticism. I do like how your strongest memory is a 5-minute window where the highest of high and the lowest of low, just like all right there. Like that can be the strongest memory of like every Cardinals fan. I think you just hit the nail on the head there. That is completely applicable.
And I'll tell you that the most affected. It wasn't even the most affected because you went from having no expectations to the top of the world and being crushed. But this last season just ended the playoff game when they just put up the record lowest offensive yards. That was actually the most affected I've ever been by a loss because of just how pathetic it was. Having to work and cover the game afterward and give site coverage of it. It was. I'd never been affected so much by a loss as I had when the Cardinal season ended. It's just how, I put it this way, we ended up wasting a potentially special season on Ryan Lindley. And I really like Ryan as a person. He's a great kid, works his butt off. His teammates loved him. But the way the season started, it had the potential to be something special. And we ended up Ryan Lindley starting a playoff game.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. He can be nice and whatever, but we all have eyes. We all saw what happened. As a Colts fan, we were all told, "Oh, Curtis Painter's a really nice guy," and I'm like, I don't think he could be any worse if he physically tried to. And then, that worked out, but yeah,
you guys don't get to say anything though, because you went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. That's not real. It's not fair, and it shouldn't. They're just like Casey. You go from Montana to Steve Young, you go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, and then you get Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. Come on,
We don't talk about Aaron Rodgers here.
Well, you talk about Aaron Rodgers all the time.
What exactly did you guys do? Who do you sell your soul to have that happen?
Well, I personally believe that is just the good Lord karmically balancing out the universe in response to the Patriots and their unholy alliance with the devil, but the NFL constantly tells me I'm not allowed to say that. I do anyway.
But you didn't just say that, of course.
No, I didn't. I just, but I will find this interesting that, like you said, I don't get to say anything, and I'm like sitting here feeling apologetic. But if I was talking to like a Steelers fan, I'd be like, yeah, what's up now? Andrew Luck here. But I'm talking to a Cardinals fan like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Because we went from Kurt Warner to Derek Anderson.
Yeah.
And then from Derek Anderson to John Skelton to Max Hall to Kevin Cobb to John Skelton to Ryan Lindley.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that then. First of all, let me start with, I'm a huge Kurt Warner fan. I'm from Iowa. I'm a big Bears fan, but one of my fondest memories is watching Kurt Warner play for the Iowa Barnstormers, which is an arena football league, or was an arena football league team there. And I actually got to go to a couple of those Rams games in St. Louis when he was the quarterback there, and I don't think he got a fair shake. I was pretty upset when he wasn't put in the Hall of Fame this year. I think that he's honestly the reason Ken Wisenhunt keeps getting head coaching jobs right now. So let's stop reminiscing. Anyway, I'm just going to end up getting him mad is what's going to happen. So let's go into 2014. The Cardinals, it was a really unusual season, as you said. Palmer goes down, then he comes back, then he gets a lot of money, and then he goes out for the season after that. Then Stanton's back in, but he gets hurt pretty much right away. But the team just kept going, and that next man up strategy just kept the boat floating and moving. But as most of us knew, it was only kind of a matter of time once the playoffs hit. I mean, you can only sustain so much loss personnel-wise before it just is too glaring to know that it's just not going to work out. Looking back on the season, and I know that you kind of already hit on this a little bit, can you give us what you thought was a success, or if you thought the season itself was a success? I think I kind of know your answer, but just give us some insight into all that.
Well, it was a success to start because they went from the 2013 season where they had zero expectations and they ended up with 10 wins, and a very unsatisfying end of the season. But at the same time, because they didn't go to the postseason, they didn't end poorly. So there was this optimism for 2014. And then 2014 turned out to live up to the expectations despite, Darnell Dockett going down early on, and they had injury after injury. And so they're kind of patchworking things. Drew Stanton steps up, and they win some games early on. But you always wondered what was going to happen. And there were lots of successes. The thing is, but no one on offense had a good year. On defense, there were some moments, but they played a really good team defense is kind of how they managed to do it. They just wore down that we got to the point where they couldn't bear the injuries. It might have been Matt Shaughnessy and it might have been at the rookie fifth rounder at Stinson that kind of was the of all things the nail that broke the camel's back at the end, because they went from going from Frosty Rucker and Tommy Kelly, and they wore down, and they just couldn't get enough playmaking late in the season. The offense wasn't able to sustain things. Success-wise, you did see Palmer improve in year two. He built on that second half in 2013. The first half of 2013, he looked like, typical turnover-prone Carson Palmer, what everyone in the national media says. Second half of the season was really good. Beginning of this season, when he was healthy, he was fantastic. So you have that to build on. The success you can say for the development of John Brown as a threat, though he did wear down. And you have to look at what Todd Bowles did with that defense, with that personnel over the course of the season. And even though it's sort of the train fell off the season, they were one of the top defenses for much of the season. until things kind of fell apart. And so you got individuals like Calais Campbell, who finally got a Pro Bowl, and you have Alex Okafor, who finally showed that he's got something with his 8 sacks on the season-leading team. You had Rashad Johnson step up and have a big year. Gerard Powers, two unsung guys who became perhaps two of the most important pieces of that defense. And so there were some little successes, and as a whole, there was a great team success of keeping going until things just fell apart.
Oftentimes when you see that sort of thing, it's all attributed to the coach getting the most out of the players and keeping optimism high. Obviously, Bruce Arians is well respected. He's AP Coach of the Year 2 years out of the past 3. So there's definitely a lot of talent there. And I'd also like to point out, despite it being kind of that cheap cop-out sort of thing, the end of year schedule for the Cardinals was exceedingly difficult. There was a lot of tough playoff caliber teams that the Cardinals had to go up against late in the year, and that definitely played a factor in all this, but there was still a competitive edge to this team. Really, a lot of it, like you said, it came down to quarterback. When you're on your 3rd and 4th string guy, you got to dial back expectations. And one thing I remember is at the beginning of the season when Carson Palmer went down, Ron and I had been talking, going, we might think that Drew Stanton is actually playing better than Carson Palmer was. And that's definitely a good job in terms of the coach and the GM identifying similar style of quarterback in their backup. And Drew Stanton followed Bruce Arians from Indy, and so there was some fit there. But let's talk a little more about Bruce Arians and John Keim. We like them a whole lot. And as you said, the Cardinals fan base has been kind of disappointed in a great many things over the years. But how much optimism and hope is there for having this amazing front of house sort of staff? I mean, how excited are the fans to have these two guys running the show?
An interesting thing with Steve Keim, the general manager. He's been part of the organization for quite some time. He's worked his way up from just a scout to director, player personnel, and now general manager. But now he's the loudest voice in the room. I compare a lot of how things are going right now to the 2008-2009 season with Ken Wisenhunt. There was a saying in Wiz we trust back then. Now it's in Arians we trust, and the cue balls because they're both bald and things like that. There is the belief. Now, there wasn't necessarily the belief in General Manager Rod Griggs before. He not being a scout guy. He's kind of a football guy. He's a guy that comes up through scouting. And there is the belief among fans and the fan base that they're going to make the best football decisions. And they create a great atmosphere of competition. Kind of always bringing in new guys to try out he talks about churning the roster. So the last 5 guys on the roster are never comfortable. They know that in any week they can be replaced, and that raises the level of concern and the level of intensity for everyone on the roster. Arians seems to be kind of a wizard, and it's interesting because of the fact that he never was a head coach in the NFL. He was always number 2, so there was some reason why, I suppose. But then now that he's done it, it works because of his age. So he's very candid. He can say things that you don't hear other coaches say, and part of that's because he's probably not going to take another head coaching job elsewhere. When he's done with the Cardinals, he'll likely retire. So he's not protecting himself for the next job. And I think that reckless abandon with which he goes about things and the belief that he develops in his players kind of set him apart from other coaches. But at the same time, what has made it work is the fact that they've been winning. And as long as they win, everyone believes in what they're doing. And as long as I can keep doing that, because Arians he's an old school football coach. He's tough. He's not real tolerant of guys recovering slowly from injuries, no matter how serious it is. If they're not ahead of time, if they're not ahead of schedule, they tend to find themselves deep in the doghouse or have their toughness questioned at some point. He does everything that he's an old school football guy in a new wave of football, and it's working right now. And everyone believes in him, even though everyone believes him too, even though half of what comes out of his mouth when he tells the media is a flat out lie. He says it like it's true, and then he said, when that's not the case, you're like, I lie real good, so haha, take that.
Nice. I also have to apologize for the John Keim. I'm just reading what Ron had written there, and
he's a reporter. Oh, and he's a reporter.
That's definitely my fault. I was copying and pasting when I was grabbing names, and I was like, man, John Keim doesn't sound right. All right, whatever. And I
I looked at that. I'm like, John Keim. I know Keim is correct, but whatever. It's cool. So thank you for just like rolling on with that without correcting me and making me look like a jackass. That's one of those we'll get it in post kind of things, I guess. Like you say that, and I just see on my little note tracker, all of a sudden an area highlighted and changed, and then Ron types in, yeah, sorry, my bad. Definitely agreeing with you about the Bruce Arians mentality, and I think that he's done something kind of unusual in that he's both a player's coach and a disciplinarian. The players love him, and yet he still holds them to task, and it works normally.
He works so hard. There are some things he doesn't practice, like they don't stretch as a team. That doesn't say they don't. He's expecting them to take care of themselves and stretch, because when it comes to the amount of practice they're given, he says, "Where's that horns go? I want them on the field practicing." And he's used a couple of times in consecutive years. He used this analogy: a guy comes at you with a pistol, you're not going to stretch. You're going to run. If you see a Doberman,
okay.
If you see a Doberman with a revolver, you're not going to stretch. You're just going to run. So he downplays that. So he doesn't use practice time. So their practices are tough. They're physical, as physical as they're allowed to. But yes, he's an old school football guy, but his players love him because of the way he interacts with the players.
He definitely has a very big heart. I mean, on the Colts pages I read, Bruce Arians is still revered, and every now and then we get Cardinals news just because Colts fans love Bruce Arians so much that he's essentially family at this point. And one of the things that stood out to me this year was he reportedly cried when he heard that Colts running back Vic Ballard suffered a season-ending injury before the preseason, and it's just a very different thing to have a guy, like you said, who's kind of rough around the edges, tell it like it is, and yet still willing to show, he cares about his players. And you definitely see on the field how that translates. There is an intensity to this team that has not really been seen in the recent years. There is a definite belief in the players around them and the scheme, and an intensity that, is got to be refreshing to see right now.
It is, and it will be very fun to hopefully see that return. Personally, I saw that intensity sort of wane when Drew Stanton went down for the season after he got hurt against St. Louis. Yes, they finished the game well, and well enough to win, but after that, it was almost saying, as long as they had hope, they were the second that it ended up, because they had the lead at Stanton. And when Stanton went down, sort of the hope went away, and they went from being a really good defensive team to a bad defensive team. And it was very apparent that as long as they held out hope, they could go to battle for one another and perform at high levels. But then the human factor kicked in. I think as much as they loved Logan Thomas and Ryan Lindley, and they said all the right things, they knew in the end they were pressing because they had to do more, and trying to do more set them back. Arians had an interesting perspective back to the preseason when back to training camp when Darnell Dawkins went down with his ACL injury. It seemed almost callous at the time. When Darnell went down, leader of the team captain, been with the team for decades, he moved the team to the other side of the field and just kept practicing rather than let them languish in the oh my gosh, what just happened. He moved them along and said, no, we continue on. And he has a great emotional connection with Darnell Dawkins as well. So it wasn't to diminish the importance to the team, but it was to tell the team, no, we can't feel sorry for ourselves. So it just, when he went down, he moved the team to the other side of the field, and they kept working. They kept drills.
And that's very similar to his interaction with Larry Fitzgerald. Like you said, face of the franchise, been with the team forever, and saying as a head coach, I'm not going to force feed this guy the ball because that's dumb football. I'm going to get the ball to who is going to be open, and that's how we game plan. And I understand Larry Fitzgerald might not like it, but obviously there is a lot of success. And, Larry signed that extension. I don't blame him now that the reports are coming out that the Browns were asking about it. That'll get anybody to re-up real fast. But definitely
go to Cleveland in his career. Oh my gosh.
All right. Yeah. It's like, no. I'll take the pay cut. It's fine. We're good. We're good. I love you guys. It's fine. So let's talk a little bit about, the personnel moves. You've got quite a few really nice signings in free agency, and none of them really seem to break the bank. Mike Iupati, Corey Redding, Sean Witherspoon, Corey Peters, A.Q. Shipley, Lamar Woodley. Almost all of them are going to come in and be a contributor. Are any of those signings standing out to you as being particularly good or bad or just exciting? Or I'd like to get your thoughts on these signings. As you don't have to touch all of them, but if you give us at least a little bit of info and insight, that'd be great.
Well, the first signing of Woodley, I think, he's just a guy anymore. But he's going to add a veteran presence who's had success, kind of the Larry Foote role, except that Foote ended up playing a huge role on the team. He wasn't expected to play when he was signed. Woodley hasn't been good in 2 or 3 years. But he will add that presence in the locker room that they need for a defensive coordinator in James Bettcher, who's never called a game. Iupati was a surprise. And with the offensive line history, the Cardinals have historically had terrible offensive lines. And yes, Iupati has issues, if you want to call them that, in pass protection. He's one of the top run-blocking guards. He's a Pro Bowler. He's one of the best guards in the game. And they plug him in on the left side next to Jared Valdir, and now you've got your left side anchored. It's doing everything they can to keep Carson Palmer healthy and to open holes to the running game. There seems to be they're going to run the ball more. That kind of broke the bank. He has a big spike in the cap. So we're getting paid a lot of money, but there's no year where you're like, oh my gosh, we have to cut it. It stays even throughout. Everyone else took under market, and that's kind of been Steve Kai's thing. It's to pick up guys at bargain prices. Corey Peters, 3 years, $9.15 million, with up to a little over 11. They add guys, Corey Peters, Corey Redding. They offset the loss of Dan Williams and Darnell Dockett without being as one-dimensional. Both of them, for example, Darnell Dockett historically was a better pass rusher. Dan Williams is fantastic against the run. Dockett wasn't as good at the run, and Dan Williams offered nothing in pass rush. Both Peters and Redding can do both and are versatile. Sean Witherspoon is perhaps the most impactful guy if he can stay healthy because, one, we don't know what the future is with Daryl Washington, and if Daryl Washington's back and they decide to keep him around after he'll face another discipline at some point, you could have the dynamic of Washington and Witherspoon, speed and physicality and leadership that you had with Carl Stansby in Washington 2013, which is great playmaking ability. And Witherspoon is a leader, and he's got a personality that you want. Shipley is an interesting case. He came in super cheap. And he's a guy that the Cardinals have been trying to get between Arians and Harold Goodwin, their offensive coordinator, has been trying to get for the last 3 off seasons. I don't know if he's going to start. I think he will. But he's physical and he's a little bit nasty, and that's what they want on the line. So they're trying to increase the physicality of their offensive line. They're increasing the depth of the defensive line, and they added speed at the linebacking core, which is something they sorely needed.
Yeah, definitely have a chance to get something great on a budget for A.Q. Shipley. I've been watching him bounce around for a while, and that guy is dramatically underrated. And I think you hit the nail on the head on just about every single one of them. Nobody's being brought in to be a world beater. They're brought in to fill a role, and each of the roles is something the team will actually need to have filled. So it's all very logical, nothing over budget, great veteran leadership in a lot of these guys. And you already touched a little bit on losing like a Darnell Dockett and a Dan Williams. Now, what about the loss of Antonio Cromartie or Sam Acho?
Acho, he hasn't technically been lost, and he was, after a really good rookie season, Acho stepped down in production and became a really good special teams player, a good depth guy, really great guy in the locker room, but really offered nothing in pass rush. Pretty solid in coverage, pretty okay against the run. Nothing he does fantastically well. And then Cromartie, that'll be a loss. But I always saw Cromartie's acquisition a year ago. Cromartie was really sort of a luxury. You already had Patrick Peterson on one side. When you get Cromartie, that was just a luxury to have. And they were a really solid defense in 2013, and they had Gerard Power starting on the other side. So as much as it's a loss, if they increase this, if they add playmaking at the inside linebackers, which they should with Witherspoon, and if they can get more out of the pass rush, they won't need to have the pairing of Peterson and Cromartie that they needed to have this year to be able to do defensively what they wanted to do.
And now, speaking of Peterson, he looked like he took kind of a step back this year, or maybe a giant leap back, depending on where you're getting the information from. A lot of media people, I kind of got the feeling, were feeling almost betrayed, which seems weird for a writer to feel betrayed by an athlete, but a lot of people were touting him up as the next number one corner in the league, and he had a down year for himself. Is there any reason, or is this like a way off base accusation? I mean, what?
There actually was. It didn't come to light until after the season. He turned his ankle, and that set him back a little bit. He did start off the season not playing great. It turns out and when he came back, there was the comment that Arian said that Peterson's had some health issues that no one knows about. We found out after the season that he had blood sugar issues. He was near diabetic, which had to have dealt with his concentration issues and some of the things he was dealing with. Once he got that under control, you saw some shutdown games against Des Bryant. You saw him match up against some really, really solid receivers. But at the beginning he struggled, and he had a couple of, there were some, obviously the game against Atlanta where Julio Jones really outplayed him. But the Cardinals outplayed him every stage in that game too. So he did sort of take a step back. You saw some of the flashes, and that's kind of what he's been a little bit in his career. It's been a little inconsistent with the potential to be great. But there might not be another guy in the league at his age who can do what he can do and is asked to do by his defensive coordinator what he does. So yes, he is kind of on the hot seat among fans, but there's no hot seat in that locker room because they know what he can do. And I expect a bounce back year from him, especially with that health issue having gotten under control.
So with all the talent that you have, it's almost pretty much unknown. The worry that I think a lot of people have is that there isn't enough of it, but I think that that's more or less just they don't know who the people are for the most part. They continue to win with guys that no one's ever heard of. Now, you guys have a cap situation where you're sitting right around the $9 million mark, cap space wise. Is there anything else free agent wise you could see them going after? And then how do you see them kind of attacking the gaps that they need to fill through the draft? Where are they going to go personnel wise? How do you kind of foresee them doing that? Is it something where we might find them taking like a third or fourth round quarterback to kind of transition from that Palmer era? Or is it something where they're kind of in win now mode only?
Well, they are in win now. They definitely are. It's free agency that kind of the one thing hanging over our heads is the situation with Adrian Peterson. The Cardinals went into the offseason saying they wanted to get a bigger running back. Adrian Peterson really wasn't on the table. last year this time they had already signed Jonathan Dwyer to be that complement, just like the year before they picked up Rashard Mendenhall, to kind of be the big back that takes those inside carries that you want. And then put Andre Ellington more in a complementary role, looking more in the passing game and get more in space. The fact that Cardinals haven't done that yet tells me one thing. It doesn't mean that Adrian Peterson's coming, but that's kind of like the number one thing. They will get Adrian Peterson if the price is right. And then after that, in terms of free agents, I don't think they're going to do a whole lot much more unless someone gets cut that, might be the Eric Winston with John Abraham of a couple of years ago, or Carlos Dansby who was cut and then later signed, or even last year's Antonio Cromartie who he didn't sign right away. If they don't get Peterson, I see them picking up some veteran back because they have no experience. They have no veteran presence in the running back room. After that, it'll be pretty much the draft. In terms of quarterback, I don't know if they draft another one. I think they're kind of set on, and they like what they see out of Logan Thomas. He was their fourth-round project, and they project him to be a pretty good player, whether that happens or not. Otherwise, if they pick a quarterback in the third, fourth round, all they're doing is picking up another project. And they've already got a project who's got a year in their system, whom Arians really likes physically what he has to do. In the draft, I see them looking at what they're going to look at. You're going to see, because of the way they did free agency, there's no real definite need. But if you picture probably a pass rusher, a project pass rusher, because where they pick in the draft, you're not going to get super high impact guys. Maybe another interior lineman, a guy who can play guard or tackle, because there is a set of a situation where, well, what if Jonathan Cooper doesn't work out this year again? Or what happens with Bobby Nancy, who will be a free agent after the season? If they have someone behind them, they can take care of that. Cornerback is somewhere where they can look. Inside linebacker, someone with some coverage skills and speed. There's a pretty good crop of inside backers who could be available between the first and third rounds, late first to the third. So there's a few guys that they like. They're always going to look for. They'll probably draft a running back. There's all sorts of reports the team likes the crop of running backs coming out. There's a few guys that even down second, third round, and even going up to Melvin Gordon's the name that comes up as a possible guy in the first round that they could even snap. So there's no real, because of the free agency. They don't really need to peg a specific need. So they don't say, we have to become linebacker. They want to get better in the pass rush. They want to continue to add depth in the offensive line. That's kind of a Steve Gunn's thing. They want to add speed to linebackers, so they picked up Weatherspoon, but they don't know if Kevin Minter's going to work out, so they might pick someone else up. Pass rush, defensive line, cornerback, safety. I don't know if they would pick up the safety because they have some youth already there. Yes, Rashawn Johnson's going to be a free agent after the season, but between Tyrann Mathieu, Deion Buchanan, and Tony Jefferson, they have a pretty good young crop there. And so that's how kind of things playing out. They're going to draft a running back. They're going to, at some point, they're going to pick up an offensive lineman. You're going to see a pass rusher. You're going to see a linebacker. You might see another defensive lineman added, even though they have some youth already on the defensive line.
I definitely appreciate you giving us a more extended view, especially when you're picking in the bottom half of the draft. It's really difficult to say, this is our guy. We're going to get this guy. It's like, well, there's like 9 guys, maybe. I don't know. And so you got to address the needs of position later. Now, with a kind of reputation as being a quarterback whisperer, having had Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and Andrew Luck their rookie years, all of them turned out okay. Andrew Luck's still in the process, but looks like he's going to be very good in the league for years to come. We can assume that Bruce Arians knows what he wants in a quarterback. So at what point is he going to kind of pull the trigger on that and make a move for his guy? And then kind of addendum to that question is, given what it's going to take to get a great quarterback, are you going to have a scenario then where you trade up to get him? Or is this take a flyer on a guy and hope it works out? As you said, you're already dealing with projects. At what point does Bruce Arians get to make his move?
Well, we might be kind of looking that in another year or two. That's kind of the window, because they have a window for winning now, and it's kind of all on how Carson Palmer plays. If they end up with Carson Palmer going down or retiring, or being ineffective, that's when they'll probably be in the position, kind of like that 1 or 2 year window with Indy, when they went from great to terrible, then back to great. Otherwise, you kind of, unless they target a guy, they're going to have to trade up. Arians definitely has his particular profile. They got to be big. They got to be strong. They got to be thick. And they've got to have a little bit of mobility. That's every single guy. They don't have to be super mobile. They'll be running quarterbacks. But so you look at the quarterbacks going back to Tim Couch and Ben Roethlisberger and Manning. They're all big, thick guys. Carson Palmer's in that mix. Logan Thomas is that. They're either going to have to luck themselves into a guy that develops. They're going to have to develop the system well enough, protection, so that they can go from a Carson Palmer to another journeyman type player, kind of a fringe great quarterback, or get lucky and have one fall to them, or be terrible, because it's hard to trade up for quarterbacks, especially when you want to continue to build around them. I wouldn't be surprised in the next year or two if they have a bad year where they're able to target their guy, unless Logan Thomas turns out.
Now, you're talking about kind of the future with the quarterback position and the draft and where they're going to go. And Kyle brought up a good point where Bruce Arians is kind of the quarterback whisperer. And the concern I have there is that the Cardinals have had so many woes at quarterback. I mean, I look back and I could fill a deck of cards with with the quarterbacks that they've had.
I could almost name you every single, almost from about 19. I can almost name you every single one. It's really, really terrible.
I mean, when you
it's
look
an
at
entire history of Jay Cutler's.
Oh, thank you for that, Kyle. I appreciate that. I mean, you look at some teams and you think of like the Packers, who have had two quarterbacks in what will end up probably being around 30 to 40 years. And you'll have the Colts, who will have two quarterbacks in probably about a 40-year span. Or the Steelers, who have had a quarterback locked up there for a very long time. And it's rare to find that, and I get that. Looking forward, if you have to continue to play the rotational quarterback game, the history shows that that's not the way to win. Like, you can win that way. We saw Rich Gannon take a team to the Super Bowl. We've seen Kurt Warner take your team to the Super Bowl and into the playoffs twice. But the way to do it, obviously, is just get your guy. So with all that said, what are the actual realistic expectations of getting to the playoffs or a Super Bowl this year? I honestly believe, had Carson Palmer not gone down and had you guys not sustained that many injuries and had Darrell Washington not decided to get himself suspended, you guys were a Super Bowl contender. Like, I had actually, at the beginning of the season, picked you guys to go to the Super Bowl.
We were calling the Cardinals for the Super Bowl from, I think, about week 2 to week 12. We were going way longer than that. And at the end, we're like, well, I mean, there's still that chance. But we figured if, you can wrap up that number 1 seed and all the playoff games to include the Super Bowl would be at home, that would be a crazy good thing. So, I mean, it didn't work out, but it's close.
So what kind of time frame are we looking at? If they're not going to get to the Super Bowl this next year, I mean, they still are playing in the NFC West. That's still, if nothing else, a tough division. Granted, the 49ers are going to be, kind of the doormat, I think, of your guys' division coming up, which bodes well for the Rams. But what is the time frame we're looking at? Are we looking at, this next year they could actually contend for the Super Bowl? Are we looking at, maybe 2016, 2017, we got to build a couple of things over a couple of years and then we're good to go? And I want to see him there so bad because I just believe in the way that team is ran, and I just want to know what your take is on it.
Really, we're looking at the window of Carson Palmer because of the real uncertainty beyond him. It's this year, it's maybe next year, and then after that, it's who knows. There's really, I think, just these 2 years, because after 2 years, after this next 2 years, then Carson Palmer, he's going to be 36. He's already had 2 major knee injuries. He's had, elbow issues. He's a quarterback who's gotten hurt a few times in his career. I think viably, this year, next year, the 2-year window, while they still have Larry Fitzgerald actually kind of under contract. I didn't think that the Cardinals could win a Super Bowl without Larry Fitzgerald, even as inconsequential as a receiver can be, just because the type of it has to happen now. And then after that, you sort of reset. After that, I have no idea, but it has to happen in the next 2 years, maybe 3, because beyond that, then you're hitting Calais Campbell's going to be a little bit. He's going to be past the prime of his career. You get these offensive linemen starting to get a little bit older. Carson Palmer, you don't know how much longer he's going to play. Larry Fitzgerald is going to be at the end of his career. So there's a lot of that veteran leadership. The core, they're getting old. They're not old right now, but after 2 more years, you can't look at them and say, call them a core as a prime core anymore. And after that, then you have to reset everything and kind of reset expectations and gauge where you're at that point.
Now, talking about expectations and resetting and just making wild judgments, we know it's early. We know the draft hasn't happened. We know that there are a lot of chips yet to fall. But as we're up against the clock, we want to wrap this up. And I would really like to get your take on what you can guess at to be the outcome of next year. I mean, wins, losses, unit improvements, what have you, how far they'll go in the playoffs, all that. How do you see this next season playing out?
I see this next season being, assuming a healthy Carson Palmer, they will go down to I think it will be a Seattle, Arizona dogfight for the division. And whoever can come out of the division as the division winner will have the edge because of their home field advantages. So I'm looking between 10 and 12 wins this year, fighting with the Seahawks to who is the better team in the division. Whoever comes out of the division as the champion, I think they have kind of the inside track to be, along with Green Bay, because I think Green Bay is going to be real competitive this year, be one of the top 2 favorites. But they have to come out of the division, and that's going to be how this year plays out. Can they make it out of the division? Can they overcome the Seahawks? And if they can do that, they're going to be legit.
Well, they are definitely the biggest competition in the division right now, and yeah,
Kyle would love nothing more than to have a new person in the NFC West overtake the Seahawks. And it's not because we don't like the Seahawks. We're both Russell Wilson fans. We like what Pete Carroll has done there. I think it's just the fans sometimes of the Seahawks.
Terrible. Terrible.
Yes.
As much as, where were they? The only thing with the San Francisco fans, they've been around forever. Seattle fans, they weren't even the Seahawks town until the Matt Hasselbeck days. So we're talking 6, 7 years. 6, 7, 8 years, and all of a sudden this fan base is the best in football. I don't know.
And I live in Alaska, so that means the Seahawks are the default local team by virtue of proximity, and you can always tell who's jumping on because it's like, oh, look at your nice shiny new jersey, number 12. It says fan on it. All right, yeah, no, you're not convincing, and it's. Oh man, if you think they're bad where you're at, they are really aggravating up here. So I don't care for it. It's bad enough to deal with -30, but then -30 and a whole bunch of jackass fans. I'm just like, I have no problem hitting you right in the face.
Kyle is actually sugarcoating a lot right now for aesthetic ear purposes, I guess is the best way to put it. He's holding back
punches as it is, but yeah, there's a definite jerkwad component to it up here in the local element. Now, well, I will share with you this quick story because you will appreciate it. With the Super Bowl, everybody flipping out, Seahawks, yay, local team, everybody going to the bars, and apparently so much smack talking. How could there not be? That's a Seahawk fan way of life. And then the outcome. And my coworker's sister works at one of the biggest sports bars and said half the men, the adult men, were crying, and the other half just got up and walked out. Like, nope, my credit card's there. You could go ahead and charge $400. I can't bear to live it down. And the Patriots fans were just smug and, Patriots fans. And And friends who were in Seattle for work said, I have never seen so many adult men crying in my life.
Well,
I love his laughter. I love
the
it.
Devil's Super Bowl, because you can't
Yes.
root for the Patriots, but you couldn't bear to see the Seahawks win again. And so, as a Cardinal, as I've disliked the Patriots. You know, Bill Belichick is really dislikable. Tom Brady is the player, you know, personification of Belichick, is because they just have that little bit of a smugness to them and the success that they've had. But then to win in that fashion over the Seahawks, I had to root for them, because you can't root for the Seahawks to do that again. But it felt almost a little bit dirty to because you're rooting for one evil. You're rooting for the team who's already sold their soul to the devil, right? So.
Yeah, we were in the exact same boat, and you have mirrored my sentiments exactly, and you are my friend, and you can come on anytime. Because that is accurate. So right now, let's turn the floor over to you. Let's open it up. Tell the people about your webpage and your Twitter and anything else that you'd like to discuss. Now is your time.
Well, for Cardinals coverage, the greatest group of Cardinals fans you're going to be able to find on the web is revengeofthebirds.com. That's revengeofthebirds.com. You can find me on Twitter, Senor Jess Root, SENORJESSROOT, or our site at Twitter, Revenge of Birds. And if you're into the podcast community as well, we have Revenge of the Birds Radio posted on our site, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and also through Blog Talk Radio.
Fantastic. Well, Jess, thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast. I think Ron had a blast. We definitely are going to have to get you on again, especially right after the draft, and get to pick your brain.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I wish I could have been more involved. All of a sudden, there was technical issues, and I was like, Kyle, take the interview. I've got to hold this together with tape and spit until this interview wraps. And finally, I got everything up and running correctly. And Kyle's in Alaska. He just has a computer and his microphone, and I have the same, but I have a little bit more equipment here that in Virginia that I use to record everything. So we do all of this, you know, just over the internet. So thank you so much, Jess, and we're going to get you back on soon.
No problem.
Okay?
All right.
All right,
Have a good one, guys.
Thank you. Once again, that was Jess Root with revengeofthebirds.com. I had a lot of fun with that guy, man. He was entertaining, but not jokey. Like, he had some good stories, he had some good jokes, he had some good insight. It was a very fun time. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, great. Probably one of the best interviews I think we've had. And that's not to downplay any of the interviewees that we've had on here. It's just I really enjoyed, like you said, unfortunately, I spent most of the time holding the podcast together because I started having technical difficulties, and like all I was doing was just frantically screaming at my computer that you couldn't hear because my mic was muted, and trying to get our recording software and our hardware to get everything together, because it wasn't working out, and I'm typing to Kyle, hey, take everything and run, because I can't do it. I'm trying to, you know, put gum and all this like Elmer's glue and some hope into keeping this call going, and I had so many issues, but I finally was able to pull it together at the end, which is why I was able to start talking.
Well, and it was easy with Jess. I mean, he allowed me to steer him, and that's really all I had to do. I didn't have to force him or lead him, and he gave good answers with a good length. It's almost like he's done this before. And then I didn't know he had a podcast on the website. I'm going to be checking that out. That sounds like a good idea for me. And like you had said earlier, despite us loving him, it's not discounting any of our other guests that we've had. It's just all of our other guests went ahead and decided to bitch out and not make fun of Tom Brady, whereas he made fun of Tom Brady. And I love him for it.
Well, I mean, and also, as much as you want it to be relevant every single time,
well,
we have
I'm
guests on the show.
You know, when we're talking with, you know, the lady from the Falcons whose name I suck at names.
Gina
I
Thomas.
suck at most things. Yeah, see, right off the top of your head, I'm like, I don't know. She was cool. She knew what she was talking about. But names, no, I just point. And and that can get real difficult over the phone and stuff. But anyway, yeah, no, you can't bring up the Falcons and be like, those damn Patriots, huh? Because they'll just be like, I don't know, I guess, whatever. Like, why are you talking to me? Where are your pants? And then, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you want it to be relevant every single show, but unfortunately, most people just don't care because they don't have any, reason to care about Tom Brady. They're not in a team that's in a division that plays them constantly and stuff like that. But
Right.
He definitely, as a team that has playoff potential, he's definitely concerned about that portion, and definitely Tom Brady. And he also has a pretty good dislike of that organization in its entirety, and he hates them for the same reason I hate them, same reasons you hate them, and we should start a club.
And it's also nice to see a like-minded individual in that. It's one thing to have a division rival and dislike them, but a lot of that, it's forged in the fire of competition. And isn't that a nerdy, dumb way of saying things? But I wanted it, and I took it. But yeah, when you get irritated because of the fan base, that's a whole nother thing. No denying that. They're easily, they're a top 2 ranked team right now. Why would they not be, even in the offseason? But, the Cardinals fans have had to put up with a lot over the years, and they're staying tough, and they've got a good thing going right now. I'm enjoying it. Their fans have always been very pleasant to deal with on our end. Anytime they email us, it's always grammar, spelling, punctuation. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. And I don't want them to drive off a bridge. So that's nice.
Well, for all of you joining us from Revenge of the Birds, you can listen to the rest of our shows. Go to our website, footballisamericapodcast.com. Also, get our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, all of the mediums that you can pretty much find a podcast on. We are there. Also, get us on Twitter at FBIA Podcast, FBIA Podcast at gmail.com, or footballisamericapodcast@gmail.com. We are there as well. We are currently working on building our website into something even greater, so hopefully that'll happen, and we can't wait to talk to Jess Root again. We've already determined that is somebody we want to have on again, and so if you're joining us from there, just be prepared. We are definitely going to have him on again.
I definitely look forward to having him back, just as we look forward to having all of you listeners from Revenge of the Birds back. I mean, most of you probably know, but hey, we talk great about the Cardinals all the time. So just take a listen. It feels good.
All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap up. Kyle, thanks. And to all the listeners out there, thank you as well.
We appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you again.
Have a good night.